It's
Well, I
really
want to
cool.
welcome everybody to here. I mean, obviously, people will join. We have a big, I think we're expecting over 100 people in this. I'm Greg. You guys see me in the newsletter. I'm not going to be on long. I wanted to get on. We're very excited about doing this for a couple reasons. First of all, this is a first time for us. And we honestly didn't know how well it would go because obviously a lot of our customers are interested in not talking to us. That's why they're ordering online. But it's great to see so many customers wanting to be involved in this kind of thing. So up front, I want to say that we want to do this a lot if it's helpful. Our goal is to empower you to make good decisions about health. It's not to sell you supplements. It's not to sell you tests. It's just give you the tools so you can make great uh, choices about your health. And anything we can do with that would be great. In other words, send us your suggestions. You can throw them in the chat below. If there's topics that you want Dr. Shannyn to talk about, I'll introduce her in a second. But just up front, I wanted to say that this is exciting for us. It's part of our mission, which is, again, is to help you make good decisions. And in some cases, we want to sell less supplements to some of you guys. Some of you guys may take things that you don't need to take. If we can help you figure out what you should be doing and it's less supplement sales, we're good with that. If it's more, we're good with that too. But we just want you taking the right thing. So that's what this is about. This will not be a sales session at all. It's not, there's no sales going on here. We do sell this stuff, let's be honest, but it's not about sales. Dr. Shannyn is not a salesperson. If you see me bleeding, by the way, I was just watching Stranger Things, and if I'm bleeding like L, but no, the real reason I'm bleeding is because I just shaved and I messed up. But yeah, some of you guys will get that reference, and some of you won't.
Yes, a common daily occurrence, a
Yeah,
risk, I would say, for.
I literally 15 minutes ago, my wife and I were watching an episode of Stranger Things. We're trying to catch up for the last season, and then I go in the bathroom and cut my hair shave. But anyway, I want to turn this over to Dr. Shannyn. Some of you guys have talked to her. As you guys know, we make her available to our customers on a free basis. For anything you want to talk about health related, you can sign up and talk to her by phone or by email. She responds very, very quickly. You can do that all at caringsunshine.com. She is a licensed ND, which means she's been through rigorous training, not just maybe an online certification. She's a licensed ND with a lot of training, and she practices to this day out in California. What city again?
San Diego.
San Diego. I thought it was a smaller town. You're out slightly outside San Diego.
I'm just right outside the limit of San Diego in a town called La Mesa. That's
That's
where
what I
my
was going for.
office is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you guys want to catch up with her, you can do it at Caring Sunshine or you can drive to San Diego. It's easier just to go on Caring Sunshine and do a Zoom call with her. But we thank y'all for joining tonight. Again, we really want your feedback. We'll probably reach out a couple times to get your advice or to get your thoughts on what we can do in the future. And then you see the Q&A, hopefully below. You should see a button. Feel free to give your thoughts there as well. And so I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Shannyn.
Great. So we're going to talk about labs tonight, and I'm going to share my screen. So I welcome your questions, but I would just let you know I've heard a lot of questions over the years, and I may answer your question before you ask it. So go ahead and wait until I talk about your particular lab and then ask the question because I often uh, answer them. And then just, bring your favorite herbal tea, cuddle up, and let's have a chat. So on the Caring Sunshine website, there is a shop, and down in the quick links over here is at home lab testing. If you click on this, this will take you to the labs that we offer. Now, these are some of the most common labs that I see just in my private practice and over the last 15 years that are really useful. Let's start with the adrenal function profile. This adrenal function profile is really about telling us where the function of your adrenals are, telling us about fatigue, telling us about energy during different times of the day. And it also just gives us a tidbit of the rest of your hormonal profile. So DHEA is the precursor to many of your other hormones, And it can tell us a little bit about the level of what is available to go into all those other hormones like testosterone, estrogen, and so forth. So DHEA is a helpful little tidbit on here to tell us whether you have the precursor to cortisol as well. Now, I've seen lots of different pictures here when patients come back and do this test. I see a lot of women getting this test, but occasionally I'll find men who are really interested in this test. And I would say sinusitis is probably the common reason I see men get this test. So men who have any type of sinus, uh, chronic issues, it can be really helpful. They're run down, but they're still pushing through it and they don't realize it. And this can really help us identify what state their adrenals are in. So this is a saliva collection. When we do collect it, we want to make sure that we're not stressed out. That means you don't want to be driving in traffic and collecting because it's going to falsely elevate that level. And we really want a good measure of what's happening to you on a daily basis. So we have an AM collection, a noon collection, an evening collection, and a night collection if you happen to get up in the middle of the night. So this shows this sample patient is really low in the morning and at noon, kind of coming to the bottom of the normal for evening and then really high at night. So this particular pattern is going to be classic with people who have trouble sleeping. And this is going to help us understand what we might be able to do both in lifestyle, supplement, that kind of thing to increase this. Now, there are three phases of adrenal fatigue that we recognize. And the first one is where you're really high and really stressed, really high. And then after a while, they get kind of exhausted. And so you tend to see different trends in that secondary and tertiary adrenal fatigue. So this can be helpful when people are scratching their head, really just trying to figure out, like, are my adrenals part of this problem? And I see a lot of perimenopause women ordering this test to try to understand what's going on. And then a lot of postmenopausal, they may be doing way more, life may be way more stressful than they actually realize. And this helps to identify it, especially those really motivated individuals. Something to note here, this adrenal function test is part of the HuMap test. So we're going to talk about this a little bit more when we get to the HuMap test. But you would not want to order these together because the adrenal function is part of the HuMap test. There are different companies, but we do still get an adrenal function profile with a HuMap test. All right, so the next one pertains to digestive issues. And this particular test will really help us understand whether we are suffering from SIBO or small intestinal bowel overgrowth. So let me talk a little bit about small intestinal bowel overgrowth. This is where we have so much bacteria in the large intestine that it kind of overflows into the small intestine, which shouldn't have any bacteria. These people are miserable. They've got bloating, abdominal pain, distension. I hear comments like they look like they're pregnant. Oftentimes they have diarrhea. Now, some of these symptoms sound very much like IBS or irritable bowel syndrome. So, something that can be confusing. So, this can be helpful to flush out and figure out whether they have more bacterial growth in the small intestine or they're just having some IBS flares. So hydrogen and methane are the primary causes of this. Lactose also can cause this type of reaction. And this is a breath test. It's real easy to do. I'm going to flip over to what you would see as a patient. This is a little bit more of what you would see. You would see the baseline without taking any hydrogen or methane. This is similar to what you can have done in your doctor's office. Sometimes they're just not very keen on running this. But if you're scratching your head trying to figure out whether you have SIBO, it's not going to go away on its own. You really need to be strategic about testing for it and treating it. So you'll be taking certain products out of a tube, and then you'll be testing every hour, I'm sorry, every 15 minutes for 90 minutes. And then they'll have an idea of whether you're spiking. So you can see on these values, you're spiking above a normal line. So this particular sample patient has some really dramatic spikes in both hydrogen and methane. So really miserable. So this is something that can be helpful in really identifying what the bloating is from. So we think it's food oftentimes, but when we eat the same thing over and over, or we eat things that didn't bother us before, it can get really confusing. So SIBO tests can be helpful to understand that. And all tests come with a lot of explanation. I review these. This one often needs a little bit more help in understanding what the values mean and so forth. And this is one of those tests that we like to retest so we can make sure that you are improved and things have progressed and been able to take care of the bacteria in the small intestine and um, we're getting more of a normal flora in your large intestine. So when we treat the small intestine, we have to be cautious about gently treating it and making sure that we're treating the large intestine as well, because the bacteria that's going into the small intestine when you have SIBO is from the large intestine. So if there's too much bacteria or it's out of balance, that's something we really have to know about. So this next test is a test about the large intestine. And this is the first picture of a sample test. If you scroll down, I'm going to show you the bigger sample test here. This is all stuff you can access on the site. You can find and look at. This first page tells us how you might compare to the normal healthy cohort. And we want to be right here in the green. We want to be this pretty shape right here. So you can see this sample patient in the white has extended into the firmicutes and the proteobacteria and really short on the Actinobacteriaceae. So they're short. Then it tells you how you compare to a normal um, cohort that has very little symptoms or no symptoms, a healthy cohort. And this particular patient, sample patient, has a high dysbiosis, meaning that their imbalance is really quite high and that they need a lot of help there. Their diversity score tells them about how much diversity they have in the different kinds of bacteria. All this bacteria does a different job. Pardon me just a minute. I have a cat who wanted to join us and she is rubbing against the computer. So we're just going to tell her to go find something to do. Sorry about that. So the diversity score is really important when understanding neurological health, hormones. All those little bugs have a different job in your gut, and they are linked to a path of um, a process that leads to either neurotransmitters or digestive enzymes. Diversity score is also really closely associated with protection from Alzheimer's, longevity. Some of the best things we can do for our gut is make sure that we're providing prebiotics. In the research, we see that people who eat beans live the longest. And all those different kinds of beans have prebiotics for gut flora. All right, so then we get into GI health markers. And butyrate producing bacteria is very important because it's about short chain fatty acids. And that is really soothing to our gut. Are you able to break down your food to provide short chain fatty acids, which really acts like manna to the little gut colon cells and makes them very happy, puffs them up so they're protective and able to do their job. They also have a marker for gut bacteria, protective bacteria. This tells us whether we have the right bacteria to help protect our gut, seal it up. Intestinal health marker is helpful. This particular sample patient has some imbalance bacteria that's causing some inflammation. So we'll see that represented here shortly. Gut bacteria versus opportunistic bacteria. Is there a balance there? They're saying there is. Now, this little box here is um, really focused on the research. And so as a clinician, I may not necessarily agree because I will look at the whole picture for you. And even though it's clinically, or I'm sorry, research related seems normal, I often see things that just don't seem normal for patients. All right, so this tells us about our normal bacteria. We saw that on the first page where we saw that shape that really showed us the different types of bacteria. And so these are families, the actinobacteria, and this looks like it's a little bit low, which we saw on the first screen. And then we have bacteroidetes, and we have one species that's really low, but overall, I would say they're pretty good. They have a high marker here, but we do want to see them in the green. We don't want to see too little or too much. We want to balance. So then we get into the firmicutes, which is a really important family. We see green, we see a little yellow, and mostly green here. There's a couple that I like to point out here. Clostridium is really important for the immune system, protection, and really making sure that your memory cells can work properly, and your different parts of your immune system can rise to the occasion to protect you. I really like to see the Lactobacillus family normal. So they do see that there's evidence of that. This one's a little high. This one's on the higher end. And Streptococcus looks pretty balanced here. This Streptococcus salivarius thermophilus, this is the strep that's often in probiotics to help protect you from strep strains. And I like to see this, not quite this high, but I do like to see it present. And if not, then this is a reason to supplement with it. All right, and then we have Streptococcus salivarius. All these streps are really important because they do a lot of jobs. They get out of hand, and they also cause a lot of inflammation. They're gram-positive infections, so they have that extra wall that protects them, and they can put out a lot of noise and cause a lot of inflammation. Um, so the streptococcus are really important. And they're often antibiotic resistant. The streptococcus strains that go rogue are often antibiotic resistant. So even though you're treated with antibiotics, it may not be enough. And all this bacteria just hides in the crevices of your gut, and they're there waiting to come out. And the good guys are waiting there to come out after you get sick, after antibiotics. They're waiting there to reproduce and to re-inoculate the gut for your safety. So that's the purpose of the appendix too, is to really hold on to gut flora that can repopulate the gut if you have a gastroenteritis that comes through and so forth. So when things get out of balance, then that's when we find that the appendix gets inflamed and so forth. Our next family here, so you can see that Firmicutes was a really large family, really important. The proteobacteria is a big family here, and this particular sample patient has a lot, so we would probably calm down on that. Good on your mycoplasma, and your Akkermansia here is really important for immune system too, so that's kind of a big marker for me too. I pay close attention to this, and we probably want to make sure that they're getting some spore probiotics to help that out. But we'll see what else is competing. So here we go into pathogenic bacteria and nothing. So according to the research, these bugs tend to be pathogenic. So it's good not to see these on there. And then we see imbalanced bacteria. Now, bacteria doesn't always show up if there's other guys who are the bully and ruling the roost. If there's so much of them, there's not room for all of them to show up. So they may not all show up, but I would say this is a great sample right here. We see Klebsiella, which can be a huge problem, causes a lot of bloating, a lot of brain fog, Citrobacter causes a lot of GI trouble. Corneobacterium, definitely a problem, but not the biggest problem here. Rothia, Staphylococcus. The Rothia is similar to like a yeast, Staphylococcus, and three types of strep. Now, I always am concerned when I see the staph and strep together. They help each other out. They cause a lot of problems. These people are miserable, and I really like to see them make some headway on their symptoms. So we treat them slowly with antimicrobials and keep an eye on those symptoms. Now, the Candida is something that I don't necessarily think is an evil thing. Candida or yeast will eat up the trash from other infections. So they often help you out. So I'm sure you have heard somebody say that they did a yeast protocol and they were suddenly sick. And the reason for that is because the yeast was doing you a favor. You have all these other infections eating up the yeast. I'm sorry, the yeast eating up all the noise from these other infections. So we're okay with the yeast until we take care of these. Unless it's just massive and they're causing so much trouble, then we treat the yeast. But most of the time, the yeast is just a sign that there's other infections. Okay, and I think that's we're getting down to that's the bacterial part of the panel, and then we get into viruses. Now, there's a question oftentimes with norovirus and rotavirus and adenovirus. This is the only panel on the market that I'm aware of that tests via stool, which is great because these are often gastrointestinal infections, and so um, the virus is usually gone within 4 to 6 weeks, so we'd have to do it early on to see if this is part of the picture. But sometimes this comes up and we're able to really identify what's going on. The body's not able to adequately mount a response to take care of this for patients. Again, another way to check for these pathogenic bacterias. We also have parasites, which we screen for the big ones like Giardia, Crypto, Entamoeba, and then lots of protozoa. Really important to check these protozoa. I do see a lot of Entamoeba. I do see a lot of Endolimax. So these are things that need to be addressed. People just don't get well until we take care of those. They often get stuck in ducts, like through to your liver and your gallbladder, and they clump together. But sometimes bacteria can clump together too. Gram-positive infections really clump together. So flukes, liver flukes, roundworms. So sometimes patients will send pictures to me, show me pictures on their phone of things that they've seen in their stool. Not something I would encourage you to do. I like to do that in a conversation where we can kind of talk about what's going on. But if there's a question about whether you've been exposed and whether you have something going on, this is the test to figure that out. And this is a 3-day collection. So you can see this collection right here, specimens collected 3. My goal is to get 3 collections out of a patient. I know it's not pleasant, but it really gives us a lot of good information to not guess. You're spending a lot of money on this test. You want to know. And so we want to take the time to collect those 3 samples. I really like to see this get in the mail on a Monday or a Tuesday so that it doesn't sit in either heat or cold, that it's getting to the lab soon. Labs are pretty quick about turning this over, and they usually get results back to us within 2 weeks. So here's some other markers that tell us more about digestion and inflammation and disease processes. So, and then the rest is just information about the results. Okay, so that is the GI panel. And personally, this is my favorite. Out of all the panels, this is my favorite as a practitioner because it tells us so much about how to protect you and balance things out for the future. Not just work on your symptoms, but to prevent disease processes like like dementia and cardiovascular disease and autoimmune disease. Autoimmune disease often is your immune system just confused about the imbalance of bacteria. It's definitely part of the picture. So there's studies published showing that certain autoimmune diseases are directly connected to particular bacteria or viruses. And if we target those, I'm able to see um, rheumatoid arthritis, especially if it has not progressed very far, reverse. So health starts in the gut. That's what naturopathic docs are about. Okay, let's go to our next test. Did we want to take a minute and answer some questions about the tests that I covered, or do you just want to wait till the end?
Sure, we can if you want.
Okay, yeah, adrenal function test, the SIBO test, the GI test.
Yeah, we don't have any questions yet, but if anybody
Oh,
has
okay,
any
great.
questions about those, you
Good.
can submit it.
Then
And
hopefully that means I'm being clear.
there you go. Thorough.
Okay, so this is the hormone test. This is the HuMap test. Okay. In this one, as I talked about, it does have the cortisone portion to it. Okay. And it's really able to help us understand the comprehensive estrogen, progesterone, and androgens, and all their breakdown metabolites. So we can see listed here all these metabolites that have to do with making estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, and so forth. So this panel is able to really flush out how your estrogen is being broken down. There's a lot of confusion about estrogen. Definitely something I can go into in another webinar, but some people are really scared of it. Some people can't live without it. So there's a lot of confusion about it. If you're a menopausal woman, you have no doubt encountered uh, estrogen and thought about it. So one of the concerns is that if you take estrogen, it puts you at higher risk for uh, breast cancer and other cancers. So uh, the the markers right here will tell us about how safe the metabolites are and whether you're breaking them down. So if you look real close, you can see that the 4-OH is the one that is the most concerning. And that's this middle one here. And we can see that this particular sample patient is on the higher end. So their liver is not breaking it down as quickly as we would like to, which will cause DNA damage, which can cause risk for cancers. So that's what this is about. So this just has that extra element of understanding um, how your estrogens are being broken down, whether your liver's working, excuse me, adequately enough. This front page is kind of a overview of everything that it finds on there, so it looks a little overwhelming. All these tell us about cortisol, okay, being a little bit high. These are slightly high. The greens are not as high. They're in the normal range, and then these blues are low. This tells about key relationships between beta versus alpha. Those are different enzyme pathways and whether you're able to break them down evenly. They have to do with this breakdown as well. Testosterone, estradiol, and where we are there. And methylation. Excuse me, a lot of talking. All right, let's go down to the sample report so I can show you the rest of it. Just has a lot of information. And we can see this is the first page we just looked at. And then this is just everything. These are all the tests on a chart. So you can see where things are moving and where they're not moving. And then they break it down. Let's look at progesterones. So this particular sample patient has a little bit of a high end of the hydroxyprogesterone, and that probably has to do with their enzyme breakdown ability. And then we look at the cortisone, and this really tells us about whether your adrenals are working properly and if there's stress involved, and it kind of tells us whether you're favoring one or the other as far as cortisol turning into the active cortisone. So it gives us more information on how to help a patient feel a little bit better and where the breakdown molecules are going. This one also tests for DHEA as well. So these are all 4 points broken down. And then we get down to the corticoid metabolites, which cortisol and cortisone break down into and what leads into those cortisone and cortisol markers. And it also tests for DHEA. So this particular sample patient is pretty low, 17 on the low end. So that would account for some of their low markers that we're seeing and can be helpful. So that's something that we can supplement, or we can just identify lifestyle things that can help them to balance that out. More ratios and calculations that tell us where things are off. Most of these are in the green here. And then we have more, another picture for testosterone. And then we look at all your androgens, or your testosterones, the precursors, and what comes after them. And we can see we have an imbalance here. We test both testosterone in men and women. And then more androgens, DHEA. This is just another picture to look at all these together and ratios to understand where we can better support. So this is a bigger picture of the estrogen breakdown methods. It gets really specific in telling us what enzymes are breaking down the estrogens, liver enzymes, as well as, throughout the body. Tells us whether metabolism needs a little assistance. Ratios and calculations that we want to be in balance to help patients out. Once we started getting into perimenopause and menopause, things can get thrown off real easy just with a little, a little shift here or there. And that's why we have power surges or hot flashes. And so it seems like just little things can really throw symptoms off. So just a little bit of adjustment on some of these values can help a patient. So oftentimes it takes me probably 2 or 3 appointments to really implement changes for patients to feel better. But usually after the first review of this, it's helpful. So some patients use this panel to keep track of their hormone testing, their HRT that they're on. Some patients do it before they go on hormone replacement therapy. Some patients do it without hormone replacement therapy. So if you're wondering where your hormones are, which affects lots of things, lots of processes during life and during a day-to-day basis, this is a really good comprehensive test. All right, so that was the HuMap. Bone health. So this is in addition to a DEXA. This doesn't take the place of a DEXA. The DEXA is the gold standard to really understanding your bone health, but this really tells us about balancing what you need to make bone. And so this is a simple blood draw and tells us where you are on most of these levels to be able to help understand whether you're building bone. I also like to do this with a comprehensive metabolic, which would have calcium in it. So these are typically electrolytes. The comprehensive metabolic has electrolytes and calcium, serum calcium, which will test to see whether you're high, whether you're low. I don't tend to supplement with calcium unless it's on the lower end. So that is something that I use along with this. But the pyrolinks at the top here tells us whether you are um, making bone. And so that's important to know. So let's scroll down and I'll see if we have a sample report here, just so you can get a bigger picture. Yeah, so this is helpful, especially for tracking bone health along with your DEXA. Okay, fatty acid profile. Are we getting enough omega-3s? Or are we getting too many omega-6s? These are always a question in patients' minds. I mean, they're taking omega-3s. Some patients are really sensitive to fish and they want to take it, but they're concerned. And so this really gives us a value as to whether we're absorbing them, whether the product you're using is working. And so this is really helpful to see a baseline and then to adjust your protocol and then retest after about 6 weeks to 3 months to understand if your omega-3s are in the green zone. We really want to see them available for um, all those processes that they do. So this is a comprehensive, probably the most comprehensive omega-3 on the market and takes the questioning out of supplementation. Okay. Fatty acids profile. Next, we have the food sensitivity panel. Now, this is a patient favorite. When you are scratching your head trying to figure out what to eat, and if something's bothering you in particular, this can be really helpful. This has to be interpreted with what's going on with you, um, because you can see there's a number here on this sample report, and once it crosses the line, here's the reference range right down here. Once it crosses that line, then you go into the reactive phase. But there are going to be some situations where you're higher, but not quite reactive. And our goal here is to really take the guessing out of what's bothering you. So that may mean that you may not be reacting to rice, but for some reason it's showing up in your panel, and it can help us um, figure out whether it is a problem. So typically when we do a panel like this, we take out these foods and then we slowly reintroduce to see if they're causing a problem. And I help give a lot of guidance on this because I've done, oh goodness, 800 of these probably. And it's been really helpful for patients, especially with any type of mast cell disorder, gastrointestinal system disorders, and
Oh,
trying to figure
wow.
out what food is bothering you. It can take 2 days or it can
Right.
take 10 days for you to get a reaction. And so that can be really confusing. So it's really helpful when patients are just scratching their head, trying to figure out what to eat and what's bothering them. So almonds are a
No
common
doubt.
one, unfortunately. Bananas are a
I
big
would
one
guess
with
that
kids who
almost.
are having reactions. Some of these aren't common. They did add organic cow's milk this past year, and I really like that because we can tell whether a patient is reacting to cow's milk or if they can drink the
Oh,
organic
wow.
cow's milk here and there. And I do find that people are reactive here, but not reactive here.
Oh,
And as we
that's good job.
reintroduce, um, we can get some clarity on that. So I also have used this for kids. Kids are much more reactive, so a lot more things will show up, but we can really try to pare down and figure out what's causing the problem based on experience, based on what's showing up and what the commonalities are. And then I've also used this on breastfeeding moms, and that's just been revolutionary. When I've had babies who are just broken out and eczema, um, it's really helpful to differentiate on what mom may be eating that may be causing the problem for babe. So I find this just a really helpful tool. I love this lab. They're so repeatable, much more than any of the other labs that I've seen. And I've done pretty much all of them. Especially in med school, we all experimented like, let's send some here, let's send some there, and let's compare. I just really love this particular company. They do a great job, and I have tons of patients who sit across from me and they say, Dr. Shannyn, this changed my life. So, really helpful panel if you are scratching your head trying to figure out what to eat. All right, hair elements. This is about heavy metals mostly, but it also tells us about elements that you may be getting too much of, or you may be getting too little of. So, um, super helpful when patients just want to know if they have been exposed to something. Now, what happens with heavy metals is we tend to keep it in our bloodstream for about 6 weeks, and then after 6 weeks, our body wants to keep us safe, so it takes it out of the bloodstream and it hides it into big bone. And then around our 60s, our body starts to kind of leak it out to get rid of it. And so that is often when I have patients coming in wanting to look at their heavy metal profile to see if it's going to be a problem. We do know that there's some connections with Parkinson's. There's a number of things that we see heavy metals connected to. Also, cardiovascular disease, especially particularly in men. So there's some things that we can do to protect ourselves by just looking to see what might be showing up in in your hair. So this is going to be something that's been around for a while, not something that you just started being exposed to. So, and then we have our essential elements, which can be helpful. Where are we showing? I recently had a 20-year-old, 20-some-year-old who came in and she actually, I told her, I said, you really kind of look like an old lady here. You just have a lot of deficiencies. And her sister was with her and they laughed and they said, you know what? We kind of joke that she's an old lady because she feels like she needs naps all the time. And so we put her on a multi that had a lot of these little guys in it. And we're going to repeat that in about 3 months, 6 months, something down the line and just see if we can get those numbers up. Because a lot of these little minerals are crucial for detox, like molybdenum. Oh, it's so wonderful and detoxing sulfur. We have such a sulfur reaction in our society. So this is just a key element to really, and you don't need much, but really helps the liver detox because your liver is your main organ. That's where a lot of these items are used but also all over. You need strontium for your bones and so forth. So depending on your picture, we'll see different pictures. Some things we see kind of more common than others. Yeah, but this really helps us understand how to protect. Has a lot of information at the end on where you might be getting these things from. One thing I see high quite often is uranium, but it's not going to show up here because they weren't high. But they have a really good explanation on that. Tells us about where you might be able to get more chromium because it's low. So just a really helpful tool. This is a really old test that we've been using for a long time. They've updated it to standard, but just a lot of depth behind this particular test. And that was our last test.
Awesome. Well, if anybody has any questions, you can add them here. We got a couple, Dr. Shannyn. Someone asked, how do you know which one is the best one for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I am happy to do a 10-minute consult. We can kind of talk about your family history, what your present concerns are, what help you might need, what you're most curious about, and we can prioritize and figure out what is going to help us get to your health goals faster. So I'm
Mhm.
happy to do that.
And then another person asked, what type of specimen are you talking about for each test?
Oh, good question. Yeah. So the adrenal function test is saliva. The SIBO test is breath. The GI test is stool, as we talked about. The
Hmm.
HuMap test is saliva. This is a little bit tricky. The biggest challenge with the HuMap collection is that you have to, I'm sorry, it's urine. I think I said saliva. This is urine. And the biggest challenge with a HuMap is that you have to restrict your urine for the day. And I found that really tricky. I didn't realize I drank so much water. Um, but they really want to get a big picture of all of your urine for the day. So they're trying to have you pee only at their pee spot at the times that they have assigned. And so they're trying to lessen that amount of water. So once you wrap your brain around that, it's a less than 24-hour collection. So if you wrap your brain around that, you're good. And then the bone health, this is a blood test. Fatty acid is also a blood test. And the food sensitivity panel is a simple finger stick that you can do on your own and send it in the mail. They have perfected it. And then the hair elements is a collection of hair, and it's trickier than you think. They really want you to get as close to the scalp as you can. Some people use their hairdresser to help them, and some some people feel like they need to grow their hair out a little bit more before they collect, and they have a little weight system in that test so to make sure that you get enough hair because you don't want to be doing this again. So,
Mm, okay. Another person asked, I have osteoporosis. Would bone health test be the one for me?
bone health is definitely a good way to rule these particular uh, potential problems out. I also really like to look at calcium. There's a couple urine tests that, your doc can run too. These typically are not tests that your doc will run. Um, I find that many of my patients just want a little bit more information, and it's not typically provided by insurance-based doctors. And so the tests that we would also run are, of course, going to be the DEXA scan, the calcium, and the metabolic testing. And then sometimes we'll do something called an N-telepeptide in urine, and that tells us whether you're a losing bone or building bone. So those are all possibilities. And I don't run that N-telepeptide that often, but some patients are pretty proactive about it and want it done. So yeah, I think this is a really good baseline for
Okay.
bone health.
Awesome. And then someone said if you're experiencing acid reflux when hungry, would any of these tests help you figure out how to solve that?
Yeah, I think uh, acid reflux is either food, so the food sensitivity panel, or gut bacteria, and so, or digestion. And so those are the two places I would think about. And I'm happy to kind of walk you through what's going on for you, and we can figure out which is more likely and what we might want to focus on first. So, yeah, and sometimes things have gone on for so long that both tests are really, really helpful. Christmas is coming up, so sometimes I have my patients ask for this kind of thing for Christmas, and that's been highly successful. They ask for this kind of thing, and there's as a stocking stuffer or just money to proceed and invest in their health.
Awesome. And then someone asked if insurance typically covers at least a percentage of these tests. Currently, that's not something we offer. I don't know, right, Shannon?
Yeah, so insurance typically does not cover these tests. You can get an itemized receipt from the lab themselves, and you could submit it to insurance. What I would do first is ask your insurance company if they cover out-of-network labs. It may just be part of your FSA and your HSA, and you can totally pay for these with your HSA and FSA. It should cover this type of thing.
Okay. Awesome. That
Yeah,
is all the questions we had.
great. Well, it's been fun talking about labs. I love labs. It just is another aspect of information. It's often very doable for patients. And I see the light turn on for patients like they feel validated. Something is going on. And it's not a mystery and a guessing game of trying this, trying that. We can just really give direct um, advice, and it's just another path for the body to tell us what's going on.
I got a couple more questions.
Okay.
Someone said I have foam in my urine. Which test would you recommend?
Oh, foam in your urine, huh? Well, I would have a lot more questions. So, yeah,
I think it
I'd
would
have a
be
lot more
helpful
questions.
if they knew how to book a session with you. So
Oh, yeah. So if you just
I
if
had
you
another person ask that as well.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, that is a very important thing. So,
Go to the Learn
uh
tab.
what's that?
The Learn tab.
Learn tab. Oh, okay, here we go. Okay, so if we click over here,
And then that
then
first thing on the left, free
this first
naturopathic. Yeah.
one, yeah, I'm familiar with the other website that we have. Free live support for a naturopathic physician. We talk via Zoom. If Zoom doesn't work, I have you just put your phone number in there and let me know so I can give you a call. And then if you have quick questions, I'm happy to answer them by email. But if it's like a short essay, it's probably better for us to talk on a Zoom because that's going to lead to more questions and then we can go back and forth on the questions. So I'm more than happy to talk with you. And then again, the testing is right here too.
hmm And somebody asked about the cost of the tests. You can see all of them on that screen she was just on.
Yeah, so this test, when
Yeah.
you click on it, it tells us this is the cost of the test with the consults to go over the test
Mhm.
and prepare for the test.
And did you want to
And
just explain kind of the process on how a
yeah,
test?
absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, so what happens is you order a test, and then I get notified, and I say, "Oh, great, Sally's going to order the GI360." So then I reach out and I say, "Hey, Sally, let's set up a time to chat so that we can make sure that, this is the right test for you, answer any questions, and I can prep you for collection. We can kind of get a big picture of what's going on." And maybe help you with little things going on. Like I help patients with little things all the time, like somebody's ears clogged up, or somebody's toe hurts, or maybe we're able to offer some options in the meantime. And so then we set up a time and we do a Zoom talk. And then the test gets drop shipped to you. You do the test. If you have questions, you email me. You send the test in. I get results. I get notified. I send you the results in an email and I say, "Hey, your results came in. Let's set up a time to chat and go over them." Most patients open the results and they're like, "I don't know what this means. This is crazy." And so then we set up a time and we go over them. And I usually give you a treatment plan afterwards. And we go from there.
Awesome. Yeah, so the last question I have is, will we receive a follow-up email with your contact information? I will send everybody that attended the webinar an email with a link to Dr. Shannon's contact information so you can email her or set up a free consultation. So yeah, it's not a problem at all.
Excellent. Great.
Perfect. Well, yeah, we appreciate everybody that came out tonight. If you have any questions, you can always email us or email Kelsey at Caring Sunshine. Dr. Shannon's email is, I don't even know.
Caring Sunshine ND
Indeed, there you go. At Gmail. Yeah,
at
that'll get to
Gmail.
her, but I will
Yep.
also send it to you in an email. And yeah, we appreciate you all coming. We hope you have a great rest of your evening and a happy holidays.
All right. I look forward to answering questions
Yes, thank
and
you.
helping solve solutions. All right. Have a good night.
Sounds good. Bye.